Think we're live.
Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, industry partners and members of the media. Welcome to the ZALORA Return of Fashion webinar for this very first quarter of 2021. Thank you all for being here today. I am Amy Yasmin, your moderator and host, as we dive into invaluable industry insights that help make sense of our current retail climate and guide decision makers in their next steps towards recovery. It's been a year now since the global health crisis had impacted not only our lives, implicating consumer behavior, businesses, and industries around the world. Despite advancements in certain fields, we've all been forced to recalibrate and reconsider our approaches as we navigate through these unprecedented times. Nevertheless, the inevitable was a change in consumer behavior, while supply chains were constantly disrupted at the mercy of a second or some third wave of infections. Indeed, throughout 2020, the industry suffered its worst year on record, with almost 3/4 of listed companies reporting losses. In fact, the International Monetary Fund predicted that global GDP will be 6.5% lower than its pre-pandemic projection. But still, hope prevails. With vaccines being rolled out slowly but surely, we move into 2021 with invigorated strength. It's one of the reasons why ZALORA, as the leading online retailer in Southeast Asia, has teamed up with a number of industry experts, such as Omnilytics, to share new and compelling insights that point in this new direction. Consider it a North Star within this diverse and ever-evolving region of Southeast Asia, as businesses and key leaders take advantage of this rebound in the industry. Now, with this in mind, it is with great pleasure to invite Ettore Strapazon, Associate Director of ZALORA Group and Lead for Trender, ZALORA's proprietary analytics solution, and Matthew Levitt, Director of Retail at Omnilytics, to share with us key observations for this first quarter of 2021. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. Just allow me to share my screen so we can go through some of the slides I put together. Okay, can you all see my screen? Good. Okay, first of all, I'm really happy to be here today. I will present you some of the data that we collected and analyzed through Trender Professional. Trender is ZALORA data analytics platform. So it's a BI solution that we offer as a service to our brand partners. So I said in this presentation, I'll guide you through some of the latest trends in terms of top categories and evolution of customers' demands. And in particular, we'll try to understand first if we see a first sign of a comeback of the mainstream fashion demand, and most importantly, when you can expect this to fully happen. So before we start, let me just briefly recap of the main observation that we saw in our last Trender report in November. So in 2020, of course, we saw a huge increase in the interest in online shopping, right? We saw it with the Google Temasek report. Comparing Q2 2020 with the year before, we saw 100+% increase in online shopping. In Singapore, 80+%, in Indonesia, 45%, in Malaysia. These are huge numbers. With this increase in online shopping, there was what we experienced specifically within the fashion and lifestyle categories, a change in demand. So we saw a customer shifting away from traditional categories like dresses and apparel towards new categories like loungewear, like athleisure, like comfort wear. We saw, of course, a big winner of last year was sports in general, all categories, from performance wear to lifestyle sports. It was the one seeing the biggest increase. And of course, we saw also new categories emerging, like beauty, luxury, and kids. So what we're doing this presentation very quickly is that, first of all, we try to understand and measure the intensity of the social restriction measures that are introduced in our region. It's been a year now. We have this Oxford index, the stringency index, that can help us quantify this effect. Second, we'll analyze the first change in share of sales that we can see in the first quarter of this year. So an update on the most recent trends in terms of customer demand for fashion categories. And then finally, we'll mix and we compare these two data to try to understand what to expect in the future. So first things first, social restriction measures. So Oxford put together this new index. They call it a stringency index. There's something quite interesting. They basically measure every day in over 180 countries in the world all these elements that you see here on the right hand side that are basically different components of social restriction measures that the various countries can actually implement. And they put them together in an index that goes from 0 to 100, so a single number measure, which is quite useful for two reasons. One, you can use this metric to compare actually different countries with different measures. And second, you can compare this measure over time. So for instance, if you look at this graph, that is the stringency index over time for some of our countries here in Southeast Asia, and we can immediately see that in the first 3 months of this year, we are not better off. If anything, some countries were a little bit worse off in terms of social restriction measures compared to the months before, compared to the last part of last year. So if we are assuming here already that in some way the most standard mainstream fashion demand is somewhat connected to this social restriction measures, then we should already say that we shouldn't expect a comeback yet early this year, no, of this kind of demand. But let's start looking at the trends that we see this first quarter. So here we're looking at categories, the main fashion categories, and there are three main data points here to keep in mind. Here we basically compare the full year, Q1 2020 to Q1 2021. Baseline is Q1 2020. You see immediately that there has been, as we mentioned before, a fall in women apparel, traditional standard apparel categories. What we see now is that this fall is kind of plateauing towards -15, -10% less share of sales versus last year. On the other end, we see sports, that was the big winner of last year, having a first slowdown, first comeback into a more similar level compared to 1 year ago, is the yellow line on top. This must be, of course, can be a local momentary slowdown, or can be a part of a long-term trend. We need to observe it also in the next quarters. And the third observation that we can make here is that men's women apparel in general is not particularly affected by the pandemic, and it's actually raising its share of sales year on year. Another observation we can make is about new categories, what we observed last year already, and it's something that is still true and actually still growing. Like all new categories like home and lifestyle, kids and beauty are continuing their growth path into this year as well. This might very well indicate already that these are not momentary trends due to the lockdowns and pandemic, but they're actually probably more long-term trends that are here to stay also after the pandemic. The third group of trends that we see is about luxury and sustainability. So luxury demand is still very strong, even though we see a first slowdown compared to the last quarter of Q4 2020, but it's still very high year on year. It's still very strong. So we saw it very well happening immediately after the pandemic started in the second quarter of 2020. A lot of new customers wanted to buy in luxury, wanted to buy in premium items, went online, and they're still there. The other point is about sustainability. It's flattish year on year, plus 1%. This is, I think, an okay sign in the sense that sustainable products are usually more pricey products, or usually more expensive products. So the fact that they're not affected negatively by the pandemic, they didn't have a negative slowdown, it's already a positive sign to me. That means that probably when we'll be out from this situation after the economic recession and everything, this could be absolutely a trend that we can see raising again. So let's dig one level deeper and let's see what happened to fashion, in particular at subcategory level. We're looking into women's apparel here, into the main subcategories. And it's quite, I'd say it's quite relevant to see what happened here. I think it's no surprise for anyone. If anything is a surprise, the magnitude of this effect. We see that traditional subcategories like dresses, tops, which are usually more connected to fashion trends, to in-trends kind of elements, seeing the biggest reduction in variation in share of sales year over year compared to pre-pandemic levels, right? On the other hand, the categories that are actually gaining the most in the same period are all these first essential subcategories like t-shirts and jeans, but also loungewear, underwear, nightwear. They're more like subcategories you buy at the checkout, right? So-called checkout shopping. So we can sort of saying that even the checkout shopping's shifted online in this sense. You can see similar trends happening in accessories and shoes as well. Here you see very well, of course, more utilitarian subcategories gaining ground year on year. Flip-flops in the shoes, we see wallet, purses, watches, shoulder bag. And on the other hand, of course, backpacks were particularly linked to travel, but also fashion elements like jewelry, fashion brands, and lifestyle elements, right? Like sneakers, ballerinas are definitely negative year on year. Another element that we can consider to make similar to look at similar evidence is actually the color mix. Here we are considering color mix within tops and dresses subcategories. Well, you can immediately see that prints and multicolor items are the one losing the most in terms of share of total sales year over year. That's no surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise. These usually are prints and multicolor are usually items that are connected to fashion trends more often. Same goes for bright colors like yellow, red, green, pink. They're all losing ground year on year, and these are again usually seasonal colors, right? Colors that are in trends. On the other hand, we see dark tones and neutral tones taking the uplift. And this is also perfectly in line with what we are seeing at subcategory level, that is a customer that is more looking into essential items, into toned down kind of fashion, right? So if we have to figure out when the fashion will come back, so we can see here what I'm plotting here in these two graphs is on one side the stringency index, so the measure of social restriction level, and on the other hand I'm plotting the share of sales of dresses on the left hand side, and the sales of prints and multicolor item on the right hand side. You can see there are negatively correlated, right? So it means that when the assumption that we had at the beginning that these two the social restriction measure are actually hindering the sales and the demand in general of fashion items, this seems to prove so, right? So we can actually assume, and here I'm just plotting in the same way, but looking at the linear interpolation of the dots. But what we can assume here is that once we'll be back to once this social restriction measure will ease and will come back to whatever is going to be the new normality, probably the demand for fashion item, for most standard fashion item, mainstream fashion item, will come back as well. Will this happen will this happen gradually in a form of a revenge shopping? Here, and this is just my opinion, but if I have to bet at this point in time, I would say it will come back in the form of a revenge shopping. Saying that simply because for two reasons. One, we already have the first hints in other countries. China is the first one. They're expecting the same to happen in UK, and the United States are the first two countries to open after the pandemic. So we have examples already in the past. And second is because, well, most of the customers will have outdated or non-fashion, non-in-trend items in their wardrobe, and they'll need to purchase back as much as they can. So I expect a possible revenge shopping phenomenon to happen here when their social restriction measure will ease in the future. So in synthesis, that very few points here, and I finish. We see that the trends we already spotted in 2020 are actually continuing. So the fashion customer is now buying into more utilitarian and essential clothing, activewear and loungewear, and still not buying back into dresses or fashion, colorful items or tops. We see the new categories going well. Beauty, kids, home and lifestyle are still growing. Luxury is also growing. Luxury and premium are growing fast, and we have the first hint. After 1 year of data, we can draw some correlation with the social restriction measures, and effectively saying that we can, with some confidence, expect that once this measure will be lifted, we'll actually see a comeback of the more traditional fashion demand. And that's all from my side.
Thank you, Ettore.
Fantastic.
Matt, your turn now.
Can anyone hear me okay? Hopefully. I'm just going to share my screen with you guys now. Can everyone see my screen okay? Fantastic. Right. Pleasure to be here, guys. Honored to speak to you. Thank you very much for giving up some part of your day to us. Hopefully what we can do today between all the panelists you see here, we're going to really help with maybe 3 or 4 useful bits of information. If you can take that away with you today, fantastic. Hopefully we've done our job. So from my side, what I want to talk to you today about is how data influences designing. Now, that may seem a bit of an oxymoron. How does science and art meet together? Well, hopefully I can show you today. So first and foremostly, let's talk about the traditional methods of trend research and maybe why they're a little bit redundant. And hopefully today what we can do with a new year, a tough year that's gone, maybe we can take this time with a bit of R&D and take our time to look at some options for our businesses in the future. So first and foremostly, we have trend forecasting. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with big brands like Snoop, Fashion Snoops and Trendstop and WGSN. This process is essentially just reviewing a very diverse source of information. So this is from historical data to geopolitics, from subculture, social media, even celebrities, and what their influence is to predict future trends. Now, this has always historically been somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But we've had brands out there that WGSN has said, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and brands have followed it, and it's great, and everyone just wears it. The problem with that, it becomes very conceptual. When you look at past trends like industrialism or individualism or nature, whatever it may be, that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And for you guys out there who are designers and brands, that may not necessarily be the details that you need to go to market and say, I'm going to create this product because I believe it's going to be in trend. And what we have found historically is that in Western markets, there's less than a 30% accuracy for most times. In Eastern markets, we're seeing even less than that. At times, only even an 18% accuracy in what they are predicting what's actually selling. Now, I'm sure that for Ettore and myself standing up here and talking about data, if we said that our data was less than 30% accurate, you probably look at us like we're a little bit crazy. Like, why would I invest in something like this? But that is the way in which we're trying to maybe add some more data, add some more impressions, add some more data sets to what's happening or what's historically happened for fashion. On top of that, the mass adoption time is 2 to 5 years. That's a long, long time to plan ahead, especially with an industry now that is see now, buy now for many cases. And lastly, it's a storytelling with really out any design or color directions. It's a really up to you as individuals to interpret that. And like we've seen in the past, that can go many different ways. Secondly, we have runway trend reports. Now, these I found will be a little bit more accurate. They focus on fashion editors, writers, stylists, and I'm sure Rand and the rest of the guys can tell you a lot more about that much better than I can. But what this talks about is it talks about recurring themes, recurring elements, silhouettes, patterns, colors, materials. This is very much intuitive. It's reported by fashion editors, and it very much focuses on micro trends. So those of you out there that are looking at those micro trends, you're looking at maybe how do I go to market with my product development strategy? What is my my OTB? Well, this is going to help you a lot more, and I'm sure that many of you out there already use it. The great thing about this is that it takes about 6 to 9 months to mass adoption. So whatever you see on the runway will take 6 to 9 months to be commercially viable or at its most demand in the commercial market. Lastly, though, there is a risk of overstocking if trend is short term. Because you're not seeing the overall pattern from runway to commercial or runway to the shelves, it doesn't really give you a good understanding of what happens in the middle. You know, are consumers responding to this trends, or it's just a fad? I'll give you a really great example. For SS20 last year, mint green was the hot topic. The problem was that mint green only manifested itself in accessories, in piping, in design elements, and sort of pockets and detailing. So really understanding how that translates is the next big thing we need to focus on. And that's when we come to trend analytics. Now, this comes from anywhere, and as I'm sure that Ettore has mentioned to you just now, it comes from many different places. This is powered by tech companies. There's no vested interest. There's no tacit consent to anything that happens in the market. So it is very, very much based on data. It is based completely unbiased. We leverage on demand. So what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is looking at what consumers are spending their money on. Are they actually physically buying this trend? And if not, then we know. If they are, it validates our understanding of this trend and its potential commercial viability. What's great about this is that you can actually break this down into less than 6 months to mass adoption. So this increases your speed to market. This allows you to look at many different features, overall colors, silhouettes, styles, even prices. You know, are these products selling out at full price or selling out at discounted price? All of that gives you an indication of how consumers are responding. So to summarize that, trend forecasts and runway reports, they provide broad trend concepts, which typically only commercialize in the next 2 years, which means it's high risk and low accuracy, mainly due to the time frame, but also due to the human error involved as well. Trend analytics incorporates data to provide insights on current product performance. So this is really going to help you support decision making. So you're probably sitting there and going, okay, you know, we'll listen to, you know, what's good about trend analytics, but what can we really do to enhance the design process? Or what can you do internally, even if you don't have access to platforms like ours? What can you do internally to enhance the designing process? Well, first of all, trend validation. Now, this is going to be absolutely essential for you. While trends and trend forecasts and runway trend reports are great for research material, it really lacks the accuracy and data to support any business decisions. Trend analytics, on the other hand, is grounded in facts. It looks at current market demands to chase future opportunities. So that means you can validate trends by incorporating data analytics to your everyday planning. Now, this isn't a far-fetched from what a lot of you do already. I have anywhere from 30 to 50 calls per week. And I know that majority of the brands out there look at social media, they look at WGSN, they look at their internal sales, they look at their sales from different branches and markets around the world. This is really just another layer on top, either validating or invalidating the direction that you're going for. And that really helps you and supports you in decision making. Secondly, this is just an example of, let me just move this out of the way so you guys can see. So this is an example of statement collars. So this has been really growing in popularity on runways. The trend was spotted on both SS20 and SS21 fashion weeks. So how did the statement collars perform commercially? So here's a great example. So we've seen this product, we've seen it getting introduced down here. We've seen in January of 2020, these products were being introduced, obviously, in the fashion weeks. Then we're seeing a little increase in sellouts, not real much increase in new in count. We get to about July and August time, we see a rapid rise in new in SKUs, whereas the rapid rise in sellout, but a real decline in new in count. So that means that the brands out there didn't really see the potential of this product going far. But if we were back in June, July, we could have told you, hey, these products are selling out at full price. They're having more and more brands are incorporating this into new in. There's more SKUs are being added week on week. We know empirically that consumers are responding well to this. Just hang on. The trend is moving in the right direction. But of course, what happens here is that brands lose confidence in it and it drops out, even though the sellout is still increasing. So those brands that held on to their stock, fantastic, they're going gangbusters. So secondly, color selection. So color is integral part. I don't have to tell you guys that it's one of the most important elements of introducing newness. I always get told that humans are like moths. They are attracted to bright things. They are attracted to color. So although staple colors such as black, white, and gray should work pretty much any time of the year, seasonal colors will be influenced by market trends and external factors such as Instagram trends in many cases. So for us, we need to really take into consideration, what does this mean? What can we take from this? Well, let me give you an example. So monochromatic beige has been around for many seasons now, including the recent SS21. Most notably by Max Mara and Hermes. So how did the color itself perform at key retailers? Well, what's very clear to see here is that besides blue, newness from Massimo Dutti and COS were mostly decked in shades of brown, nude, and pink. So retailers that had data on color would have been able to study color trends across the industry before deciding to integrate neutrals into their future collection. So what this means is that if they were just able to look at the market before making these decisions, we could then really define what colors specifically, even down to Pantone codes, what Pantone codes are really resonating right now. And I'm sure that designers out there right now going, if you can tell me what Pantone codes are selling, fantastic. That gives me so much more confidence in the design DNA that I'm going for. So hopefully understanding that and attributing yourself to that is going to really help things. So next, product market fit. So data can help you identify trend direction based on the products from local brands and competitors, keeping your brand completely relevant. Local trends will obviously differ according to the season, weather, and festivities. The amount of brands that I have from places like Australia trying to sell into the US with diametrically different seasons is crazy. And they're trying to pull their old collection to the US and going, why isn't it selling? Well, especially when it comes to assortment planning for countries in the Southern Hemisphere, globally distributed brands struggle to cater to local demands. And we've seen this with brands like Esprit. With no knowledge on local demand, your brand becomes irrelevant and out of reach, which is understandable. So what does this look like? Well, for example, in Australia, Zara stocks more summer essentials like dresses and short, while outerwear makes up 18% of Zara's assortment in the UK as it's winter there. So this shows us the importance of factoring in local market conditions and customer needs when assortment planning. So why react faster? Well, your consumers are reacting faster. Your consumers have been stuck indoors. I can guarantee you they're very, very savvy at understanding what trend demands there are, what's happening on social media, what promotions you're running, what new SKUs you have. Why react faster? Because your consumers are. So I want to take you through a lingerie case study really quickly about Zoom fashion. Now we're all Zoom fashion right now. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm wearing a shirt on top, but I am wearing shorts underneath. It's Zoom fashion, we're all aware of it, right? So this consumer shift has really moved heavily towards comfort. And we'll talk on this a little bit later. But it has dominated SS21 and the mass market adoption is incredible. The amount of our clients that come to us and say, we want to create a work from home edit. Yeah, that's great. Does this indicate commercial performance? Well, this is where data comes in to validate this. So what we can see here is a trend performance line for various different types of products. And in this case, we're seeing jumpsuits and play suits, shorts, intimates, pants and leggings, tops that all fit this sort of lounge or loungewear vibe. And almost, if not all of these various categories are uptrending. So this is telling us a lot that actually Yes, these products are selling at full price. When they come in new, they're selling very well. The sellout state is increasing. That over time, that means it's getting the demand for it is even improving into this year as well. And as you can see here, this gray line represents all categories of loungewear, all categories of clothing, and the green line represents all categories of intimates or loungewear, or keywords with lounge or loungewear in them. The increase has been better than all other categories, and after a tough year, that tells you quite a lot about how it's performing. So if you want to look at loungewear, even patterns, colors, materials, and retailers, etc., all of this information is available to you to help you make those decisions on product development, on your current collections, and on what is going to come into your platform for the next year. And as you can see here as well, the new in, which is represented by the boxes here, has increased dramatically. And not only that, this little blue line represents sellout rate. So we're seeing a lot more brands on the ship, a lot more consumers getting on as well. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Matt, for taking us through such thorough insights. That was a very interesting presentation right there. But it gives me great comfort to know that even though we aren't quite out of the woods yet, the path that we are on is getting just a little bit clearer. And if not, a little bit easier to navigate. I'm actually getting quite a few questions from the floor on both your presentations. So good to see you've kept all our viewers on the edges of their seats, but we'll revisit that towards the end of this session. That said, it's always great to hear perspectives from different corners of the industry. Joining us on this Q&A segment of our webinar is Rans Manukom, fashion editor at Metro Magazine's Philippines. Hi, Rans, and welcome. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us today.
Hi, everyone. So I'm so excited to be here, and I hope you're all doing well.
Great, thank you. So let's crack on with the Q&A. Ettore, let's talk one of your key points of the presentation. Well, it's quite understandable how sportswear has dominated the market. Menswear seems to have fared better than women's apparel, having gained higher shares of sales compared to pre-pandemic levels. Could you perhaps contextualize how and why this had happened?
Yes, thank you. It's a very good question. It's something we observed, and actually we looked into as well, because as you said, it has a quite different trend compared to, for instance, women apparel, right? So there are different effects that plays a role into that, in my opinion. So the first effect is that fashion, the male customers is a less fashionable customer. I hope this doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. Might be a little bit of a disappointment for someone, but we do. Don't get me wrong. We do have fashionable male customer. We have a specific type fashionable male customer. We know them very well. We have from the minimalist Korean style to printed tees to classic formal wear. We know them all. But the mass market male customer is not fashionable. He's a customer that is already trending towards a more essential style. Black tea is 30% of the sales. The equivalent category of dresses into menswear is t-shirt. Okay, that's the idea. T-shirt, jeans, underwear, essential. So in that sense, if you look into that, t-shirts are selling less year on year. So in a way, the fashion element is going down a little bit. But on the other hand, you have another effect that is offline customers that going online to buy their essential stuff are much more actually. So on the men's categories, that the ones you lose for fashion, for the less fashion items, right? So in this sense, we see an increase. We definitely see an increase. And on the other hand, male customer is more value driven on average, so responds better to discounts and promotions. And definitely 2020 has been a important year in terms of value given to the customers through sales and campaigns period. So I think both these elements play their role here.
Great, thank you, Ettore. Meanwhile, Matthew, your analysis mentioned how we're seeing more seasonal SKUs launched, pieces that have higher fashion cred, historically riskier to stock. How does this compare against menswear, which, as Victoria pointed out, gained better traction than women's wear? Or does this apply to both menswear and women's wear?
Yeah, really good question. I think ultimately, Artori's hit the nail on the head. I mean, we've seen exactly that on our side, is that, you know, women are traditionally more fashionable than men, or spend more time spending money on fashion, especially when it comes to clothes and apparel more than men do. Probably not me. In my relationship, I spend a lot more money on that than my girlfriend does. But in the general trend is they're very much that way. But what we're also seeing this slow regeneration, this slow growth or renaissance this year of brands that are definitely stocking more seasonal. So when I say seasonal, what I mean by that is more fashionable products, so more designs, maybe not your traditional cottons. Maybe we're seeing more sort of seeing more silks, or we're seeing more poly blends. We're seeing more leathers. We're seeing more products that you would normally see in a season rather than continuously throughout the year. So what that is telling us is it's telling us that brands are becoming a little bit more confident in what they are currently selling, because they're actually selling these products. You'd have to be pretty you'd have to be pretty slow to think that to launch these products with a guess based on last year, right? It's been a very, very tough last year, but what we're seeing is we're seeing increased sellout rate in more complicated designs. We're seeing increased sellout rates in more expensive materials. We're seeing it, as Artoria said before, we're seeing increased sellout rate in premium or luxury products online from both ZALORA but also other marketplaces as well. So what this is telling us is there's a bit of a dichotomy here, is that we've seen that tradition last year, but now we're seeing these first indications or signals, manifestation of the market maybe improving for a few of these brands, which may be able to say, and I don't shoot the messenger, but what it's definitely showing us is that the market is starting to believe a little bit more, because consumers are responding to these more seasonal or high fashion trend products.
Great. So in essence, we're getting a little bit bolder and braver in our decision making right now, especially now that we've got the results to back it up. Speaking of which, though, with the vaccines being rolled out, do you think the trends are going to change or consistently go along beside it as well?
I think what we're probably going to see is, yeah, I mean, look, the vaccines are still a thing, but it doesn't eradicate what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. Nobody likes putting on a mask and going out and scanning everything left, right, and center as part of their day out, right? It's not quite the same feeling anymore. And bearing in mind, people are not going to be able to travel. Now, the amount of brands that I speak to in Singapore and Malaysia who rely on tourists or people coming into the country is another thing entirely. Yes, vaccines, that's great. But then again, the question is, does that change our day-to-day? Does that mean that we're going to shop without masks? Does that mean that we're going to shop without scanning? Does that mean that every store is going to be open? No, of course not. So I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see a slow move to perhaps more riskier SKUs. But I think at the same time, now that offline stores are opening again, I believe we're going to see a slightly different approach to market, where consumers will be searching for products online. They'll be then going to stores, trying them on if they see fit to try them on, and then eventually buying online, because that's where the big discounts, and like Atoya was saying, the big discounts and the value-based consumers are buying. So I think it's very much going to be around making sure that every brand has an online presence. And if you don't have an online presence, you're missing out massively on a consumer that is very digitally native, especially in the last year. So I think that we'll be able to see that move. There is a move, but at the moment, I don't see it happening for a long while if borders aren't opening.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Now, speaking of fashion trends, I think this is a question for you, Rance. We're both fashion people here.
Yeah.
Now, autumn/winter 21, the collections were really all about tailored pieces, and they really shared no expense when it came to that. What do you think this says about our current lifestyle from a fashion perspective? Do you think it's going to evolve in some way? And if so, what do you think it'll be?
I feel like if there's anything that the pandemic has taught us, it's really just fashion is somehow gearing towards comfort. And I think more and more people realize that vitality, which is like, even though clothes look great, they also can be comfortable. And this is, so I think Ettore like dabbled on this very eloquently with the elevated loungewear, which now is actually carving its own category, which is comfort wear. So now, and it's not just a trend anymore, or it's rather turning into like a way of dressing up. And comfort wear or comfort dressing doesn't necessarily mean casual anymore. They reinvent suiting, or how do you call it? It's like there's this new sofa to screen silhouette now, and later on there will be like screen to real life dressing. So this is like sort of like the trajectory of comfort wear, which there could be an upmarket edge to our loungewear, that they're not meant for the home anymore. But there can be designs that you can actually take out, and without even having to change what you're wearing anymore. And I think comfort wear, and if it's not going to stay as a category, it will morph into our wardrobe, because like it's such a digestible category. I think it's a category that crosses all generations, like regions, and then household income. Comfort wear. It's like I think it's a key differentiator for consumers, as our homes, they now are multi-purpose facilities. They're your office, they're your school for some people. It's where you work out. So now, like, I think it'll translate into the way we dress up also. Like, we just need multifunctional pieces. If they look great, they also have to be comfortable. If they look comfortable, more or less, they're already comfortable already.
I love it. That's actually my mantra, my fashion mantra too. If you're not comfortable with what you're wearing, you're just not gonna be able to translate that, especially in your face. So okay, just kind of going back on to what Ettore and Matt had kind of previously mentioned, as well as in terms of colors. Now this kind of like interested me a little bit, especially when basic colors were actually, because I'm wearing like blue. I'm like a peacock. But you guys are saying that basic and muted colors are doing super well, if not incredibly well, throughout the pandemic. What are your thoughts on that? And especially Rance, you're fashion editor.
In terms of color, I think now people have safer choices in terms of fashion. They are just more practical with what they buy. It's not anymore like what they can wear outside and be a little, like a little bit more daring or bolder. I mean, that's how I used to dress up, especially like if I go out. I'm the fashion editor. I also set a standard for dressing up. But now it's really just more, what can I keep in my wardrobe for a long time, and that are seasonless, that I can just like wear and rewear, restyle, use and abuse, and still keep its sanctity as a piece. And I think color is one of those things that I can morph it into something else so easily if I just have the basics for now, and just work with it and make it feel like something brand new later on. And so I feel like in terms of colors today, I think that's where people are at. Like, let me get the basics so I can, when on Zoom after like 5 meetings, they won't even notice I'm wearing the same inner top.
Love that.
And
That's so true.
Case in point, I'm in all beige or like neutral at the moment.
But Ettore and Matthew, do you guys see this is somehow going to be changing in a few months to come, especially now that we're getting a little bit bolder in our choices?
Yeah, look, I think Rance is absolutely right. I think that there's a number of reasons for this. I think that there have been a lot of sort of social moves, geopolitical movements, especially towards things like sustainability, things like the way that we treat the earth, the way that we treat ourselves. Nike launching its health app increased its sales by 70% online in China. I mean, that was a genius move, and showing people that actually, taking care of yourself, taking care of the world, taking care of each other is really the way to go. And I think out of that has become this concept of mental health as well. It's been, okay, everyone's stuck inside, everyone's dealing with the same things, let's all try and support each other. And I think this sort of slightly more moral or ethical view of the world has started to fruit, and it started to really bear legs. So yeah, I think that is manifested in the way that we look at color. Of course, we're at home, we're indoors. humans feel more comfortable in those colors, humans don't necessarily like the bright colors. They like looking at it and they like clicking on it, but ultimately what we've always seen is that they'll look at it and then they'll eventually go and buy the black or the brown or the gray or the blue. So I don't think that's too much of a surprise, but what we've also seen, of course, is that that's all that's available, because brands are taking less of a risk. So what we're seeing then is, if we had anything and everything to offer all consumers, maybe we'd see a different shift, but actually what we're definitely seeing is brands are pulling away from that. And so that's all consumers can buy. And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in and of its own.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually how color therapy works, especially in terms of a retail context. Going back to what you said about sustainability, and this kind of surprised me a little bit, considering how everyone's really, the whole movement on its own, it's such a big deal, I guess from like maybe a few years back, but now I guess it really gained traction last year. But however, findings suggest that retailers have reduced their investments due to a weak demand. Why do you think this is so?
Yeah, I think ultimately I hate to use this word because I think that it's used incorrectly quite a lot, but there's a lot of virtue signaling. There's a lot of people saying, hey, we're Adidas, or we're this brand, or we're that brand, and we're going to create sustainable products. And then those people that are interested in that take a little bit of a deeper look into that brand and how they go to market. And then they see there's a lot of issues with that. There's a lot of issues in how they go to market, the way in which they employ, the way in which they produce. What we have found on the other side is that actually we found a lot more smaller brands started to begin their journey in fashion from a sustainable standpoint. So we're seeing brands that are sourcing other ethical brands, they're sourcing ethical practices, they're sourcing ethical materials, and then they're presenting their whole brand image as sustainability. So I think on the very high end, you have people that, especially in the corporate enterprise brands, you have a lot of those brands that are saying, hey, we're introducing an ethical line. And the people that really want to buy that stuff are already out of the mix. They don't want to know about it. They want to know about people who've taken it seriously from the get-go. And I think that's what you're seeing is that the corporates haven't really communicated that the way that they should. And these smaller brands who are creating their whole image around it are becoming a lot more successful in terms of relationship to one another. So I think that's the slight dichotomy there.
Great, thanks, Matt. Now, inversely, Ettore, luxury goods have retained a somewhat stable projection. As a fashion girl myself, and I'm sure Rans can also relate to this, if not everyone in this room, investing in classics is an important fashion rule. So I can understand the logic behind that. But by the first quarter of this year, it started to dip from 7% of sales to just about 5.8%. What are your thoughts on this?
So yeah, that's what we observed. I think. Look, I think there is one premise to be done here, that is what we said the other in 2020, when we started observing 2020, is that there was a new customer interested in premium and luxury fashion that was coming online for the first time, or at least by this amount was coming online for the first time, and it was usually buying these items offline. Now, I believe the first, let's call it luxury customers that went offline in the first wave, it's still, let's say, discount-driven luxury customer. So it's not the customer that wants the item, the in-season item, as soon as he gets to the store, right? So in that sense, probably that trend you could see, the big spike in Q4 and the comeback this quarter is probably due to that we had a particular high intense promotional activities in Q4, and now they're waiting for the next promotions. This might be one reason. Also because if you think about it, the luxury premium fashion experience is something different, particularly when you look at offline stores, when you look at the whole offline experience, it's something that the customer might want to retain. So I think as an online fashion retailer, we still have some work to do in order to create the right environment online and the right credibility online to catch also this full price, let's call it full price customer, right? The customer that wants the first item in season. That could come at a second time. For now, I think we're still talking to the value-driven customer. So customer that wants to buy previous collection at a discounted price. Still, we're talking about premium brands, and we're talking about the top luxury brands. It's just a second-tier customer, we might say.
Great, thanks, Ettore. Something that we've kind of glazed upon, especially when it comes to the Southeast Asian demographic, is that we're predominantly a mobile first market, in a sense that we've completely skipped the desktop phase. But another issue to remember is that as a region, we're also comprised of rural and remote areas. Matthew and Ettore, how can businesses and retail leaders overcome this challenge, considering how important it is to be omnipresent, omni-channel?
Yeah. I can take this. I think, yeah, what you say is completely true, and it's super relevant, right? I was mentioning before the huge increase in online customer and in general online users that we saw as a result of the lockdown and the pandemic effects. Let's not forget this increase. If you look at countries like Indonesia and Philippines, or also Malaysia, most of these new customers comes exactly from these new remote areas, islands, that compared to a much lower increase in the metropolitan areas, in the capital cities, right? So it's super important for brands at this stage to be able to reach the customer, to be able to deliver to their customers. So I think one positive outcome of this, multi-channel digital gold rush that followed the pandemic is that it created a huge demand for integrated logistics and logistical services. So you see a lot of e-commerce enablers. You see, we also do it. ZALORA also do it. We have one SS program. We have e-distribution program. So we offer the service to the brands, as many other players in the region, and there are more and more that are born every month, every quarter. And this will, on one side, of course, create competition, lower prices, and make this kind of services available for more brands. So it's going to be easier and easier for the fashion brands who want to reach this customer to do so in the future.
Great, thanks, Ettore. Now, moving forwards, I think one of the biggest mental blocks when it comes to charging ahead and dealing with the rebound is trying to figure out how to be more acutely wary of winning segments, markets, and channel combinations. Where do we start to get those answers, Ettore and Matthew?
Sorry, yeah. I think first and foremostly, I've seen with our sort of touch points with brands, we've seen far too many brands who probably don't think about this question enough. I'll give you a really good example. That we have a client who's a very popular designer in Singapore. 3 years ago, she approached us and mentioned that her collection wasn't selling at the speed she would like, and ultimately, we didn't really see much of a choice, a wrong choice in her patterns, price, product, silhouette, etc. And these products were in high demand in the market, according to our dashboard. So what became very clear was that her selection of subcategories could actually be improved. So it wasn't her design, it wasn't her aesthetic, it wasn't her price points. It was that the best-selling subcategories in her aesthetic and price point were actually in the pants and leggings categories, and she was in tops, dresses, and skirts categories. Now, all we said to her was, look, I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're doing. I just think that the big demand for your aesthetic and price is actually in a different category. Her sales then grew 250% in the next 6 months, and then has been 60% year on year since then. So in this case, that designer did nothing wrong in her design process. She just wasn't looking at where the winning segments, market, channel combinations were. So what I tend to ask all my clients is, and I think this is very, very important for your listeners, is what do consumers buy when they don't buy from me? Because if you can understand that, then you can really understand what is in your consumer's mindset. And I get a lot of brands saying to me, but Matt, my customers talk to me all the time. They tell me what they want. So yes, but that's based on maybe a few hundred, a few thousand. I'm talking about millions upon millions of consumers if you really want to take your brand to the next level. I've had brands locally that are in fast fashion and don't consider Zara to be their competitors. That's crazy. Zara is a fast fashion monolith. They are dominating majority of markets around the world. You need to know what they are selling so that you can at least understand what it is your consumers are going to buy. The same thing can be said for distribution channels. I have a lot of brands that come to me and say, hey, Matt, I want to sell on ZALORA. And their price point and compared to ZALORA's price point for their particular market are completely diametrically opposite. And I'm saying, well, look, I mean, yeah, sure. I'm sure that you got a great product, but there's also many things in Southeast Asia that people just don't buy. Your product is actually far more suited to the UK or to Australia or maybe to a Lazada or whatever it may be. So knowing where your consumer demand is and crucially what they are buying is a huge advantage. Now, Ettore presented on Trender. Now that's a fantastic tool to be able to show you what it is that's happening internally and just adding a little bit of data to your everyday processes. I'm not asking people to go crazy and go buy every sort of best in field for every marketplace, but I think it's absolutely important to make sure that when you're looking at the market, you're focusing on your consumer and you're focusing where they're buying from empirically. And look at your competitors, look at what they're selling, look at what's performing well for them, and just use that, not to influence you, but to use that to give you a little bit of a benchmark into what is happening in the market, what your consumers are responding to. And if there's any good time that has ever been in the history of mankind, it is right now. Because like Ettore was saying about revenge shopping, make sure that we are there ready to sell when that comes around. And the signals of it, as we've seen already, is starting to come around already.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be one of those few people, not many of the millions who are going to be joining in the revenge shopping. I'm definitely one of those. Got my wallets ready. I just need to buff it up. Now, thank you so much to Ettore, Matthew, and Rans. I think it's time for us to kind of go through all the questions that our viewers have been sending in. Okay, so let's go through to Nika Rogue, and this is for Rans. Hello, I'm Nika Rogue from the Manila Times. I have a question for Rans Manukom. That's you. What can you say about fashion in the Philippines during the pandemic? And what do you think our fashion will look like this year? Over to you, Rans.
Hi, Nico. So yeah, fashion in the Philippines. So the past year, it's been very tricky for everyone, both brands and designers. At the start of the pandemic, these designers have been putting out like PPEs, like those very safety centric pieces, thinking that it's something that they'll carry throughout the year. But nobody really bought them unless they're necessary in your work. So what has been happening in the Philippines, it's really more like a touch and go. So let's see what's needed right now, and then let's produce it in big quantities, and then like go for it. Only to realize by the next month it's not what people needed anyway. So I think the Philippine landscape, I'm sure as with any Southeast Asian market as well, it's very volatile. There is really what do people need, and what will people be wearing. So they've been dabbling in all sectors of fashion, only to realize they just need comfortable clothes and quality masks. It's really just more I don't know how you call it. It's more addressing a customer that you don't even know what they want, because like during the pandemic, I didn't even know what I wanted. I wanted a luxury bag. I wanted a Prada bag just because I thought it'll make me happy. But I also wanted something. I want like a good set of loungewear also, because I know I need it right now. So it's in the Philippines. Well, we economically, sartorially, we don't know what's going on, and I think the markets or the brands that have succeeded are those just really responding well off the moment, and really are focusing on building a community around their customers, saying, yes, we're here for you, and then we'll weather through it together. These are the products that can help you at the moment, talk to us in our community, and then the next month we'll bring something new to the table. So I think more than the actual product in the Philippines, fashion has been more about bringing people together. The causes, I don't know, like helping each other out. And I'm sure in other Southeast Asian regions, in some shape or form, it's been the same.
Great, thank you, Rance. I hope that answers your question, Nico. Another question here coming from Cherry Tan. Can we get into more of the specifics of sportswear category, or do you have any ready data to share? Perhaps Matt or Ettore, you might want to take this.
Hi, Sherry. Oh, sorry, I lost me for a second there. Yeah, so for sportswear category, what we found predominantly is people who are buying loungewear that has a sportswear alternative to it. So we're seeing a lot of yoga pants, a lot of yoga tops we're seeing, and then on the other side, we're seeing a lot of joggers, which are sort of slightly more baggy, coming predominantly from a lot of sort of big corporate brands. We do absolutely do have ready data to share. I don't have much bandwidth to do it right now, but more than happy to chat with you afterwards. What I would definitely say that has happened, and there's been a really, really interesting movement, is brands like Lululemon, Lorna Jane, Lafayette 148. They have been running what we call like sweat sessions through WeChat. And it's been massive throughout China and a lot of the territories outside of China as well. So what we've definitely found is a massive increase in yoga wear that's practically used for yoga and also for sportswear as well. And we've seen that brands like Cotton On have introduced their Cotton On body line, which has done incredibly well through this period of time because it's affordable, it's functional, and it's very simple. And it has been a real massive change in the market. Players that you'd never really think would be there or be fighting for it have definitely put their hand up to be counted for sure.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, one more question, and this is for Ettore. Have you seen a massive boom in performance from kidswear on ZALORA, and how can we take these learnings to be able to comp performance in 2021 from Victoria Van Buren?
Yeah. Hi, Victoria. Absolutely, we see kids as one of the so-called new categories that we're growing, and we're growing steadily online. It's something that we're trying to grow extensively, and the kids wear goes well hand in hand with a lot of other lifestyle categories around the whole kids wear, kids toys that goes also into kids shoes and accessories, right? It's a growing, and it's in my view it's a category that has a huge potential, and it connects, in my view, it connects so well with the kind of customer that ZALORA has, right? So we have 75% of customers are female, 85% of customers are below 35 years old. It should be already our customer. I think what we're building now is really the credibility to have a full inventory, to have a full set of brands, to have the kind of like top products online, and we are making sure that this is there. And I believe that 2021 will see not only the same growth, but even a faster pace. This category will definitely fly. Yeah.
Thank you, Ettore. Now, last question, and if any of you, Rance, Ettore, or Matt wants to jump in on this question, please feel free to do so. Any idea why there's any increase in luxury and premium? From an anonymous questioner right here.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a little bit of a thought on that as well. We actually did a bit of research on this and tried to look at, what premium brands were doing in the market. And what we found was that brands like Jacquemus were suddenly creating videos and experimenting with live streams, or even making, TikTok videos, which are obviously an internet favorite during this lockdown. And what it's really shown us is that a lot of these premium brands, for some reason or another, have really adapted well to this crisis. And they've really stopped viewing consumers as dollar signs, but also, essentially people who believe and support your brand values. So I found that a lot of these big brands have sort of pushed away a little bit from their sort of mystique that they've had previously, and I've really focused on sincerity and transparency. And what has been very, very interesting, because we can't really go to those brick and mortar stores, a lot of these luxury retailers have pivoted very hard and gone right into marketplace. And obviously with ZALORA, you're seeing a massive increase with premium products on their platforms. You're also seeing a massive increase with luxury platforms on a lot of other online channels as well. So we're seeing, probably for the first time ever, premium and luxury brands really taking seriously consumers that are shopping online and offering discounts for the shoppers that are a little bit more value driven as well. So it's been this sort of honest look at themselves, and then almost through necessity have pivoted, and it's gone very, very well for them. And like you're saying, Rams, I'm going to be out there revenge shopping for some Prada bags as well. So Prada, if you're listening, if you're out there, promotions, please. I'd love to have some.
Thank you, Matt. I'll join you in the queue for a Prada bag. last. Sorry.
Right after me.
Right after you. No, I'll fight you for it. All right, one last question. This is from Su Ping, a second-year NUS marketing student. Now, she was wondering, what is your opinion about the luxury industry and how it has been impacted by recent trends? Anyone would feel free to jump in on this question. Either Ettore or Matt. Rans, feel free.
I think it's an interesting question. I probably want to clarify a little bit about what you feel it's been impacted by. But I think ultimately, like I mentioned just now, they have pivoted really, really well over the last last year, really. And especially what we've seen as well, just before the lockdown, there was, for some reason, a very strong increase in overseas consumption of luxury goods by Chinese millennials. And that has been a growth that we've seen for the last sort of 9 months or so. I picked it up first around April last year, and it seemed to increase from there. So what's obvious is that because the Chinese have such a massive tourist demographic that do travel and then do buy abroad, the majority of luxury products bought by Chinese consumers, native Chinese consumers, are bought internationally. We're seeing demographics that have a little bit more reach than they had previously, able to shop online and then bring those products back from instead of actually traveling and going and seeing those products, which normally we wouldn't be able to see that impact as strong. So people who aren't spending money on traveling, people who do have the money to buy these exclusive goods, don't really know where to put that money. And so what you're seeing is that there's this growth being put into consumables that, and I'll be honest with you, I've been one of those people guilty of it, is that there's not much to look forward to, not historically, maybe more recently. And sort of waiting for that package in the mail, waiting for something to come to your door, has been a massive driver for a lot of people, and a lot of people that we've spoken to, a lot of customers that we speak to, a lot of brands that we speak to. I mean, that's my sort of iterative thoughts on it, but I think that there's a lot of other different reasons, and I'm sure Rans and Ettore can elucidate on them.
Great, thank you, Matt. Su Ping, I hope that answers your question. Now, unfortunately, we have to wrap our session. So thank you so much to all our viewers who have been sending in their questions. I've missed out quite a bit, but feel free to just message any of us, even on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where we're going to be submitting our videos soon after as well. Just to thank everyone for being here today, taking the time out of your busy schedules, sharing your insights and everything. So it's been a really great pleasure. Thank you to Matt, Ettore, and Rans. Wish we could go on a little bit further on this, but unfortunately we just ran out of time. Hopefully the next session will be a little bit longer. But yeah, until then, this is your host, Amy Yasmin. Feel free to once again send in any of the questions if you're interested in Trender and Omnilytics and how both of these can help you and your businesses. Please do get in touch as well. But until then, wishing you to stay safe and stay healthy, and see you next time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.